Hello, welcome to this introduction video for the OMC-042 data logger. My name is Rob Beun and I'm a sales engineer at Observator Instruments. I will explain to you what this logger is all about in this video. There's another video that goes into the details of configuring the logger, but this video is only the introduction part. The logger is available in different housings, so first let's have a look at them. This is the housing with a display. This is the housing that I will also be using in the video for configuring the logger. I will get back to this one in a moment. Next we have a logger version with a solar panel. So we have the printed circuit board with the batteries and GPS antenna and everything inside. You only need to connect the sensors externally. Then we have the version with a blind cover. Again, battery, printed circuit board, everything is inside. Now, as they are here, they don't have cable clamps installed yet, but when you order them, we will install one up to three cable clamps for you. Then there is a logger version that is slightly different. The printed circuit board has a different shape and there are minor differences between the loggers. The main difference, however, is the housing. This one was intended for integration in a rain meter, but it is useful for other applications as well. It has one cable clamp and one connection for an external antenna. The reason to have an external antenna in this case is that if you put this inside a rain meter, it will be inside a metal housing, so you need to have the antenna externally. So these are the four housings in which the logger is available. Let's have a better look at the version with display. As you can see, there is a push button below the display. This button is not like an on-off switch of the logger. It has nothing to do with the logging function. It's only an activation button for the display. When you press the button, the display is activated, and as long as you are working with the display, it will remain activated, and then after a certain inactivity period that you can configure, the display will switch off, or you can, by pressing the button, switch off the display immediately. Let's have a better look at the display. If you press the activation button, the display is activated and you can see the actual values. So these are the values that are being read from the sensors at this moment. If you tip on a particular parameter, for example here the processor temperature, you get a graph of the last 24 hours of data. You can also go back to the previous 24 hours, but that is empty now because I only recorded for 24 hours. And you can go back to the main display and then you can select another parameter to see the last 24 hours of data. Now if you wait for the inactivity period to expire, the display will switch off, or you can push the button to make it switch off immediately. Now let's have a look what's inside the logger. Be careful when you open the logger because of the wires connecting the bottom part and the lid to each other. The bottom part contains the main printed circuit board. Here we see the GPRS modem. This is the holder for the SIM card. The SIM card is inserted now, but normally you will have to insert your own SIM card. Below you can just see the SD card that is already installed when you receive the logger. Here's the processor, the USB connector, and this is the backup battery in case the main battery is missing. It will keep the clock and everything running. The connectors, we will get back to that later in more detail when we look at the pinning diagram. But in short, these are the analog inputs, voltage and current. Here we have the RS-232 inputs. These are the digital inputs. Here are some switched power outputs and the SDI connector. And this finally is the Modbus connector. The lid contains the printed circuit board for the battery. There's also an external power connector that you can use, and in that case you can use the battery as a backup. The GPRS antenna is integrated. This is the cable connecting to the GPRS antenna, and behind this printed circuit board is the electronics for the display. Finally, to understand what kind of sensors can be connected to the logger, let's have a look at the pinning diagram. Here we see the pinning diagram of the OMC-042 data logger. The version for the rain gauge is slightly different, but in essence it's the same. At the top we find the RS485 port or Modbus port. This port shares some hardware with the RS232 bus on port 1. Below that we find the port 2 RS232. This port shares some hardware with the SDI12 bus. If you use the version with display, this port is used for controlling the display, for communicating with the display. Here we see 4 analog inputs, 4 to 20 mA or 0 to 20 mA. Below that is the high resolution differential analog input, voltage input. The ranges mentioned here are the maximum ranges. You can also program a lower range to be the full scale value. The switched module power output 5 volt can be used to switch on and off external modules, and if you use the version with display, this power output is used to switch on and off the display, or actually to power the display. Then we have the SDI12 bus. We have the switch power output for external sensors. It's a 12 volt output, so you can use this to switch your external sensors on and off. I'll skip a few here. We go to the digital inputs. These can be used for example, a rain gauge, a tipping bucket rain gauge, or any other pulse counting function, or an alarming function. In case of the version with display, digital input 1 is used for the activation button of the display. The ground, the antenna, the USB, and the battery connection speaks for themselves. So now we come to the end of this introduction video. If you want to learn more about the logger, please have a look at the tutorial video that will explain in detail to you how to connect sensors to the logger and how to get your data on the server. Thanks for your attention.